Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Stories That Inspire Us. My name is Janice Malillo, your host, and I am so excited to welcome my guest today. You know, many stories start out with a backdrop, and as I've often said, there is a story behind the story. Today, I want to welcome to the Stories podcast Becca Pearce. She is the CEO of extendcoach.com, leadership lessons for CEOs, high-performing executives, and women leaders. But that is not where her story starts. Becca, welcome to the Stories That Inspire Us podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. So I really want, excuse me, I really want our viewers and listeners to hear the very raw and vulnerable side of your story. Let's start there. Can you fill us in on what has transpired?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything about it is raw and vulnerable. So, you know, I actually have a couple stories, and one I'm actually going to take everybody back to September of 2011. And in September of 2011, the Affordable Care Act had been passed, and in 2013, the exchanges were going to go live. So in less than 2 years, the state of Maryland had decided they were going to implement Obamacare at the time, with no real legislation to get us there, no real staff, and no understanding of how we were going to make it happen. And I was identified as the first CEO of the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange. And I was super excited. Even though all of those things were the case, I was super excited to take the job. I was 39 years old, 38 at the time. I had a 3 or 4 year old daughter, and I was on top of the world. I was the CEO of something really big. Mm-hmm. Fast forward through that. And in October of 2013, when it was supposed to go live, it didn't turn on. And so I had created an organization of over 90 people. I had gotten 3 state agencies to work together. I had implemented a system, even a backup system, to support 300,000 people to be enrolled in health insurance. But since the technical side didn't turn on, it was seen as a public failure. And I lost my job quite publicly, like above the fold with a picture, kind of quite publicly. Fortunately, I landed on my feet. That doesn't happen for women very often. And so I was a vice president within a medical system within several years. And at this point, my daughter was 7, and my hearing had gotten so bad that she couldn't. I said, you know, you can't talk in mommy's bad ear. You have to talk in mommy's good ear. And it had gotten bad enough. It had been going bad for 2 years, and it had gotten bad enough that I finally decided I was going to go to the doctor. And my biggest fear in going to the doctor at the time was that I was wasting his time. I came out of the hearing exam, essentially, a couple steps, but essentially finding out that I had a golf ball sized brain tumor.
Oh my gosh.
And I needed surgery almost immediately. So between the time that I was diagnosed and the time that I had surgery was 5 weeks. In those 5 weeks, I needed to organize my family, my life, all of those things, because I was having brain surgery. And so it was a really, really scary time. What I figured out, the good news is I'm here, right? So the good news is it was benign and operable. Those are the 2 best words that anybody with brain tumor can ever hear. And the other good news is I live 11 miles from Hopkins. And so Hopkins does these on a regular basis. It's a very rare brain tumor, but Hopkins does this on a regular basis. And so I came out of surgery. So I went into surgery, and, you know, there was a 10% chance that my face might be paralyzed. And, you know, my biggest fear at the time was that I was going to come out with my face paralyzed. I wasn't even, I wasn't even thinking about the life or death thing, because I was like, I am so strong and I'm so healthy that I'm not going to be the person that dies on the table. So I wake up and I think to myself, oh my God, thank God I'm alive. Turns
Mhm.
out I had to learn to walk again. I'm deaf in my left ear. I'm mostly blind in my left eye. I have very significant ongoing balance issues. Like, it changed everything about, and when I say everything, I mean everything about who I am. So here I am, right afterwards, and I'm learning to walk again. And, right after surgery, it was like every 12 hours, something was different. It was like, oh, look at that. I didn't drool out of my mouth today. That's such a great achievement. Or look at that. I was able to make it to the door without falling over. Yay, what a great achievement. And so, I spent about 3 to 6 months in this phase of continually trying to just get back to who I was. And at that point, I decided that I had to go back to work. I couldn't let the brain tumor win. So I went back to work, proved to myself that I could do all of those things again. And about the time that I figured out that I could do it again was the time that I realized, why am I doing this?
Mhm.
The most important thing in my entire life, the only thing I wanted to do was put my daughter on the bus one more time. And I didn't want the stress. I didn't want anything that went along with being at work anymore. And so I remember the day that I was walking into work and I said to my husband, I said, I don't think I can do this anymore. And he said, can't you just hang out for a little while and actually for a couple of years? And I go, what if I'm not alive in a couple of years? And so I quit and went back to school to become an executive coach. And I have this situation where I've often been the only woman in the boardroom. I understand, boy, do I understand politics very clearly. So I wanted to be able to bring that back to people. And so I think my story is really a story about resilience and figuring out where you fit.
Resiliency times 100.
Thank you.
I mean, oh my gosh, you're experiencing some hearing issues before you find out. How long would you say about, because I'm just curious that you were experiencing those issues.
I think that they probably started about 2 years before I actually went in, and it was gradual. And it wasn't until a friend of mine, when I was joking about it, a friend of mine looked at me dead in the eye and she goes, that's not normal, right? Single-sided deafness is not normal. You need to go in. And I was like, well, I'm going to be wasting their time. She's like, that's their job. I was like, okay. So that's when I finally went in, when a friend of mine looked at me and was like, you're an idiot for not going to the doctor.
And I can't even imagine, okay, I'm going to take my friend's advice. I'm going to go in, get the hearing test, no problem. Yet your life in a flash was turned upside down so quickly.
So the longer version of that is that I went in for my hearing exam. They sent me to get an MRI. I'm about to get the MRI. I'm in the little room where you change into the scrubs.
Mhm.
And I looked in the mirror and I said, today's the day your life is going to change. Somehow I knew. And so I went into that MRI and I came out and I am sure that they handed me the DVD. It was 8 years ago. They were still handing things on DVD. And they said, you're going to want to talk to your doctor. Now, I'm sure what she said is probably your next step is to talk to your doctor. What I heard was, this is a really big deal. So what did I do? I went back home, I put that DVD in my computer and pulled it up, and anybody could see there was a big, huge white blob of a brain tumor. And it was 11 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't want to call my husband at work. And I felt like I couldn't call him and bring him home. And I just didn't know what to do. So I went for a run, because that's what I do. I run. And I went for an 8-mile run and I cried the entire time. And I remember thinking to myself, what do I want to be remembered for? Because at that point I didn't know it was benign.
Mhm.
And so, what do I want to be remembered for? That's the type of conversation that I was having with myself. It was terrifying.
Again, I can't even fathom that. And you go for a run, you come back home, obviously, eventually. And when you had that conversation with your husband about what was transpiring, I just feel that your family was in that turmoil with you, not knowing at that point what was going to transpire, the fear of the unknown, like so many, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Where do I go from here?
Yeah, it's amazing. My husband is, I mean, everybody says their husband's perfect for them, right? My husband is perfect for me. And he is so steadfast and just, I told him and he said, okay, when are we going to the doctor? Like he just was like, okay, it's in front of us. We're going to deal with it. Let's move forward. He went to every single doctor's appointment with me and wrote down notes. And we would talk about it when we came out because we heard totally different things. If there are a couple things that I can say to people who are listening, number one, go to the doctor. Had I gone to the doctor 2 years beforehand, my face would probably not be paralyzed. Had I gone to the doctor when I still first had hearing problems, I would not be in the situation that I'm in now. Go to the doctor. The second thing I would tell people is take someone with you. Every time I walked out of that doctor's appointment, this is sort of, I'm, being glib, but every time I would walk out, all I heard was, you're going to die. And my husband was like, that's not actually what he said. What he said was this, this, and this. And so, during that month, I was actually training for a race. I'm a big runner. Obviously, I was training for a race. And for the first time in my life, I gave up a race and we went to the Bahamas. The three of us went to the Bahamas. And I was like, who knows? Who knows if I'm going to be here? And so let's do it.
And I'm glad that you had that opportunity to do that at that time. When you are faced with a potential life-threatening type of situation. And I want to back up for a second as well, because like you say something that's really key there about how your husband always went to the doctor with you. And it's true that I can understand where you hear the same thing, but your perception and his perception were totally two different things. And I feel in a way it's almost like when you hear the word cancer.
Mhm.
Whenever I hear that word, I think of a death sentence.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that just having him stand next to me was, and still to this day.
Mhm.
I mean, I getting on and off airplanes is very, very, like, I can't even try and explain it, but it's very difficult. And I'm embarrassed and there's so many emotions that go along with it. And he just stands right next to me and he holds me up and we keep going. So I'm so lucky to have that support too.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I feel as though obviously that was such an integral part of your recovery process as you went through, as you said, learning to walk again, learning to do everything again.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I keep thinking about when just that relearning, there are so many things that go along with it. My 7-year-old daughter would walk me to the bathroom and help me go to the bathroom, right? And she would wait for me outside, but she had to walk me to the bathroom and talk about vulnerability. And part of the reason that it's important to know the earlier part of the story too, the backstory of me being a CEO and all of those things by the time I was 38. I didn't know what vulnerability was. I probably didn't even know what humility was, honestly. And talk about being vulnerable. I mean, it slapped me in the face and it has completely changed the way I see the value of vulnerability, the importance of showing up as a human, the importance of optimism. I had a nurse say to me beforehand, she said, I will tell you, I was a recovery nurse, and how you go into surgery 100% dictates how well you will do after surgery.
Mhm.
And that optimism of 12 hours, okay, what's different in these 12 hours? What's different now? Just is what has kept me going to where I am today. There's just, and I think about that now, and at some point I had somebody who was sick and that I knew, and they said, I just don't understand how you could have been so optimistic through all of this. And to me, it's that optimism that allows you, there's a proverb, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Well, that's the optimism that allows you to get up and do it.
And that optimism is obviously what carried you through this life-changing event, which, as you said, has brought you to where you are today.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. So now your life has completely changed. Your family's life has completely changed. But I feel a sense of, you started an amazing business. You went from CEO, life-threatening situation, to where you are today. And I feel that this is one of those stories of triumph over tragedy. Like, you've poured your heart into where you are today to build your business.
I think, you often talk about, I will never, ever, ever say that I'm happy that I had a brain tumor.
Right.
I appreciate that it gave me the opportunity to live who I want to be, that I have found my true calling, that that I can bring all of my experiences to other people so that they don't have to get in a situation. Hopefully they never are in a situation where they're in a life-threatening situation, but I can bring that to them and help them recognize what's really important, because that's what happened. Part of what happened was me recognizing what's really important to me. I fell in love with my husband all over again. Like, there are so many interesting things that happened during this, and this recognition of, oh God, I don't care about my title anymore. I don't need to be in charge anymore. But I know that I can bring this experience to other people and help them recognize that if they're in the rut, they're sitting there going, I'm miserable. They don't have to continue doing that anymore.
I think that it's very poignant that you just mentioned you looked at what was really important to you. And you mentioned falling in love with your husband again. That's very beautiful.
Yeah, I really, it really gave me the opportunity to just look again, that life before was like, well, I wish I had this and I wish I had this and I'll be happy when, completely disappeared. And my husband is, I truly fell in love with him again, because how could anybody love somebody whose face is paralyzed? And I mean, there were so many emotions in there, and he stood by me and he showed me what love is really all about.
And that is beyond beautiful. And, certainly on a personal level, I can, as you mentioned, never would you have wished to have this golf ball size tumor, but you had appreciation to where you wanted to further go. And I think of my son's accident. Never ever would I want my son to go through what he's been through. Yet through his recovery process, and I believe I shared this with you in our pre-podcast chit chat, one of the times that I was traveling back from Philly to Connecticut, where he said, Mama, you got to continue to take care of yourself and do the things that you love to do. And it was in that moment where Stories That Inspire Us was born.
Right. Right.
And, as I think about that, and as I think of your story and coming to that realization, to have that appreciation, I don't know if I would be doing this type of a podcast, I guess is what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way.
Interesting.
Yet here I am. And that is so important to me. It has such more depth and value, and you also said, I'll be happy when, like, don't we say that to ourselves all the time? Yet when we are faced with something very dramatic, that does at some point come up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember right after surgery, it was like 60 degrees and raining, and it was like an early June day. And normally I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe it's raining and gray and in June. What did, insert whatever expletive at the time. And I was like, oh my God, it's raining and gray. What a great day. Like the perspective just completely changes.
That is so true, because our perception may be obviously totally different than someone else's, and we have more of a appreciation for what we thought was to where we are today.
Yep. I'm also lucky enough that perspective has stayed with me. I think that we can't live our life like we're going to die tomorrow every day.
Mhm.
And there's also a possibility to be present where you are and love and accept where you are at the moment. And I think, when I work with a lot of people, that's sort of the definition, right? You're unhappy if you're not happy doing what you're doing right at that moment.
Mhm.
And so, so I'm lucky that perspective has stayed with me.
And that is amazing, because as I said, you started your business. You mentioned that you took the courses,
Mhm.
and here you are in a position to really share your depth and knowledge from a CEO perspective, from what you've been through, and kind of mold everything together. And
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sorry to interrupt. I often talk about that's actually the value of what I bring to coaching, is that, there are times that I am the former drop your emotion at the door, let's talk about the bottom line while
Mhm.
coaching people, but it's more often balanced with now, what's the emotion keeping you from making the smart decision, and what do we need to work through? So it is that balance that is really valuable, I think.
Definitely valuable, because I kind of see where the emotional aspect, and perhaps the fear when your clients come to you, and it's like, okay, what Becca is saying makes sense, but how do I get down to the basics of where I want to go? Because we want to get there, right? Like we want
Right.
it like yesterday, but we have to do the steps to support us, like create that foundation.
Yeah. Often it really is the emotion behind whatever it is that you need to do. You quote unquote need to, right? But it's just, there's something there keeping you from being able to do that. And that's where that discussion about the emotion really comes in.
And I think a lot of times too, it's that emotional factor that can really catapult us forward, or it just keeps us stuck in that muck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you think about going back to that example, right? 60 degree day raining in June, to me, had always been
Mhm.
a bad emotion. I'm angry that this is the situation, right? And so that neural pathway had been created for anger, right? And so it's very difficult to get past that neural pathway, but it's not there anymore. I'm just honestly, I'm just happy to wake up every day.
And waking up every day is not obviously something that we should take for granted. And it's those things that, help us to, maybe somebody has a passion out there and they wake up and like, I really want to do this, but they keep like, it's on the sidelines. What would you say to somebody right now that perhaps listening or may view the YouTube video, whatever it may be, that thing that's over there on the sidelines that they want to achieve, or that passion and they have a purpose to maybe start their business?
Yeah, I think I work with a lot of people who have, been doing what they're supposed to do for a long time. And they don't recognize that that passion can be something. There's usually some voice, either nobody wants to hear it, or I can't make money at it, or, the biggest fear often is I can't, I need to stay in my job for security purposes. Um, I would say, do you really? When you have a voice that pushes you back to say, oh no, you can't do that because, question it. Is that true? Can I really not afford to do this? How long could I, and start asking yourself questions. How long could I last if I started my own business? That type of thing. Just question that voice that tells you you can't.
And I think that there, along with the fear, there is that resistance factor.
For a lot of people, the resistance factor is, who will I be if I do new thing, right? And how will that change? For example, I don't have the same friends that I did before surgery, right? I mean, it really, so people fear, what is that change going to be? And, the universe has a way of putting in front of you what works. And so you will find new things that work for you, and you will make it work. And when it's your passion, and when it's that voice inside of you that's been telling you for years that you can do something different and that you have more to offer, or you could be more respected for what what you bring to the table, there is room for that. And somebody is going to see it, and somebody's going to love you for it.
And also, I believe, having enough love for yourself to say, this is something that really can make a difference in someone's life. It's scary as heck to go out and do this thing that I want to do, but I really want to impact a lives. I want to impact families. And how good is that? And in the interim, you're doing something that you love to do. You're able to provide for yourself and your family. And you're, perhaps able to maybe do more financially, like maybe donate to a favorite 501c3, whatever it may be. And that creates so many more opportunities for other people.
Yeah, it's interesting too that I think that what it does is it allows you to live more within your values, right? To create that space, and you're more mentally available to do what you want to do and be the person you want to be outside of work too.
Yes, I love that. I just want to segue over for a moment and welcome all of our amazing listeners currently on the Wisdom Audio app. I see some familiar names, so thank you all for being here today. Becca, I want to kind of talk about your business again. What is one big goal that maybe you're working on within your business that is going to be beyond awesome? Like, is there something on the horizon for you and your business?
Yeah, so we actually have a retreat coming up in Colorado May 3rd through the 5th, so very soon. And we have run this retreat before, and it is life-changing for those people who we have just talked about, who know that they've done everything they're supposed to do. They've checked all the boxes, they've taken care of their kids, they've worked the job they're supposed to work, and they have some voice or some fire or some passion inside of them that they know could come out, but are scared to try and figure out how to make it happen.
Mhm.
We're having that retreat for them.
Wow, that is wonderful.
Yes.
And you mentioned that it's May 3rd to the 5th in Colorado.
hmm
What are some types of events that you have planned for the retreat?
So we structure the event. It's a 2.5-day retreat, and we structure it so you have time to go for a hike, or there's time that we're in a small group where we're working through what's going on for you, and then there's time for yourself. So what's it called? Garden of the Gods is right next to where we're going to be. So, people can go hiking, you can do yoga outside, there's a view of the mountains. So it's really a time for you to be by yourself and do what you need to do for yourself, which, by the way, women don't do very often.
That is true. And FYI, obviously International Women's Month, self-care is not selfish.
Correct. It is absolutely, we have been trained that we should always be putting other people first. And it is not selfish. It's okay to decide that you're going to take some time for yourself.
Absolutely. What types of transformations have you seen within your retreats of people that have attended?
Yeah, so we had one person come and she thought that she just needed to get rid of her job, and she, didn't realize. She was like, oh, I really feel tied to this company, this, that, and the other. Not only did she quit her job, she realized she had a book inside of her, and she's now writing a book. So like just that type of recognition of thinking so much bigger than you can possibly think alone, because your brain does a really amazing job of putting boundaries and pulling you back in. And so this is just space for you to kind of open up your thinking.
Wow, that is beautiful. And by the way, have you written a book yet?
I have not written one yet.
I foresee one in your future, just saying.
I just haven't figured it out yet. I would love to write one. I just haven't figured it out yet.
Wow, that is so exciting. Becca, do you have time for one of our listeners to maybe come up on stage and share in the conversation, or perhaps ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, Wisdom, we have time for one guest to come up on stage. If you'd like to contribute to the conversation, or perhaps ask Becca some questions, we would love to have you come up. Becca, as we are waiting, how can our viewers and listeners connect with you further?
The best way to actually get a hold of me is through my website, www.extendcoach.com. I'm also on LinkedIn at Rebecca Pearce. And I'm aging myself. I'm 50, so that means I'm not on Instagram, I'm not on TikTok, I'm not on any of those types of things. So those are the two best ways to get a hold of me.
Okay, wonderful. And of course, I will make sure all of your contact information is within the show notes. I am really overwhelmed by your story, but in such an amazing way. To come from a place, CEO, your health scare, to where you are today, kind of blows my mind, but in such a good way, because as you said, you've had appreciation for what you and your family have been through, and to be out, so to speak, on the other side, and to inspire others to do the same. These are the stories that inspire us, truly.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, when I just going back to the CEO thing, like fell very hard. And I still didn't learn that, that family was most important. I still needed that achievement for myself. And my biggest learning was I don't need to achieve to be loved.
Mhm.
And that was life-changing for me also. And so that's what helped me realize being present and being here and helping other people is what's most important to me.
That is beautiful. Becca, I hope as your story continues to evolve, that you would definitely consider coming back on again, because I'd love to share more about your story. My gosh. And I'm so excited for you and your retreat in Colorado. It sounds absolutely amazing.
Very excited too. Thank you.
I assume all that information's on your website. If
Yes.
somebody's interested in checking that out, perfect. Oh my gosh. Well, you heard it here. Becca will definitely be back. I can't thank you enough. These are your story. Touches my heart. Thank you for sharing it in such a way that honors not only your journey, of course, but your families as well. My name is Janice Malillo, the host of Stories That Inspire Us. Today, completely swept away in inspiration by this amazing lady, Becca Pearce. Thank you again, Becca.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Well, everyone, we shall see you again very soon. Thank you so much, and bye for now.